The moment I showed those entitled sisters my boarding pass, their faces went white as paper. They thought they could bully me out of my seat with their screaming and fake tears, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. When the captain himself walked down that aisle and saw what was happening, the entire cabin fell silent. What happened next had 200 passengers erupting in applause, and those Karen sisters. They got exactly the first-class cabin of Flight 447 buzzed with the usual pre-takeoff energy, expensive perfume mixing with leather, and the soft rustle of designer clothing. Dr. Sarah Chen adjusted her navy blazer and checked her watch, 6:47 p.m. Right on time. She'd specifically chosen this red-eye flight to Los Angeles because it would get her there early for the most important presentation of her career. Seat 2A. Window seat, first class. She'd paid extra for it, upgraded from her usual economy because this trip mattered. The pharmaceutical conference tomorrow could change everything. Her research on breakthrough cancer treatments had finally caught the attention of the industry's biggest players. Sarah made her way down the aisle, her carry-on rolling smoothly. Behind her, she'd packed light, just her laptop, presentation materials, and a change of clothes. Everything else could wait until she got to the hotel. "Excuse me," she said politely to the flight attendant, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and perfectly styled auburn hair. "I'm in 2A. The flight attendant, whose name tag read Monica, smiled warmly. "Of course, Dr. Chen. Let me help you with your bag." But as Sarah approached row 2, she stopped short. Two women, clearly sisters based on their matching blonde highlights and identical designer handbags, were already seated in her row. The younger one, maybe late 20s, had claimed the window seat. The older one, early 30s, sat in the middle. "Excuse me," Sarah said, keeping her voice level. "I think there might be some confusion. I'm in 2A. The younger sister looked up from her phone, her expression immediately shifting from bored to annoyed. "No, you're not. This is our row. We are traveling together." "I'm sure there's been a mistake," Sarah replied, pulling out her boarding pass. "See? 2A, window seat." The older sister leaned forward, her voice dripping with condescension. "Look, sweetheart, I don't know what kind of scam you're trying to pull, but these are our seats. We specifically requested to sit together." "I'm not trying to pull anything," Sarah said, her patience beginning to thin. "I have my boarding pass right here. This is my assigned seat." The younger sister, who looked like she'd stepped out of a reality TV show with her over-contoured makeup and artificial lashes, let out an exaggerated sigh. "Oh my God, seriously? Can you just find somewhere else to sit? We are obviously already settled in." "I'm sorry, but I paid for this specific seat," Sarah said, her voice firm but still professional. "I need to be here." The older sister stood up, her designer heels clicking against the cabin floor. She was tall, imposing, with the kind of presence that probably intimidated retail workers and restaurant servers. "Listen here, little girl. I don't know what kind of game you think you're playing, but you need to back off. These seats are taken." "I'm not playing any game," Sarah replied, her medical training kicking in. "Stay calm under pressure, think clearly, don't let emotions cloud judgment. I'm simply trying to get to my assigned seat." The confrontation was beginning to attract attention. Other first-class passengers were turning in their seats, some craning their necks to see what was happening. The sisters seemed to feed off the attention, their voices getting louder and more dramatic. "This is ridiculous," the younger sister announced, loud enough for half the cabin to hear. "We specifically booked these seats together because I have anxiety about flying. I can't sit anywhere else." Sarah noticed the irony. The woman claiming to have flight anxiety seemed perfectly comfortable making a scene that was far more stressful than simply switching seats would have been. Monica, the flight attendant, appeared at Sarah's elbow. "Is everything all right here?" "Yes," Sarah said calmly. "I'm just trying to get to my assigned seat, 2A. "No," the older sister interjected. "She's trying to steal our seats. We've been sitting here for 10 minutes already. We have boarding passes too." "Of course you do," Monica said diplomatically. "Could I see everyone's boarding passes, please?" The sisters exchanged a quick glance, so brief that Sarah almost missed it. Then the younger one rummaged through her oversized Gucci bag, taking an unusually long time to find her boarding pass. "I know it's in here somewhere," she muttered, her voice suddenly less confident. Sarah held out her boarding pass immediately. Monica scanned it quickly, then looked at the seat numbers. "Dr. Chen, you're correct. You're assigned to 2A. She turned to the sisters. "Ladies, if I could see your boarding passes." The older sister's face was flushing red. "This is absolutely ridiculous. We shouldn't have to prove anything. We were here first." "I understand your frustration," Monica said, maintaining her professional demeanor. "But I do need to see your boarding passes to resolve this situation." The younger sister finally produced a crumpled boarding pass from her bag. Monica took it, scanned it, and her eyebrows rose slightly. This shows you're assigned to seat 12B. That's in economy." "That's impossible," the older sister shrieked. "We specifically requested first-class seats together." "I'm sorry," Monica said, "but requesting seats and being assigned seats are different things. If you'd like to upgrade to first class, I'd be happy to check availability, but the upgrade fee would be $800 per person." The younger sister interrupted. "We already checked. That's completely unreasonable." The older sister stepped closer to Monica, her voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "Listen, you need to fix this. We are not moving. We've been loyal customers of this airline for years." "I appreciate your loyalty," Monica replied evenly, "but I can't change seat assignments that have already been confirmed and paid for." "This is discrimination," the younger sister announced, her voice carrying throughout the cabin. "You're treating us unfairly because we are women." Sarah felt her jaw drop. The accusation was so absurd, so completely divorced from reality, that she almost laughed. "Almost," Monica said, her patience clearly being tested. "This isn't about gender. This is about seat assignments and tickets. Don't you dare patronize me," the older sister snapped. "I want to speak to your manager." "No, I want to speak to the pilot. This is completely unacceptable." Other passengers were beginning to murmur among themselves. Sarah could hear fragments of conversation. "I can't believe they're making such a scene. Clearly in the wrong seats. Poor flight attendant." A businessman in seat 1B leaned forward. "Excuse me, but some of us have connecting flights. Could we please resolve this quickly?" The younger sister whirled around to face him. "Mind your own business. This doesn't concern you." "Actually, it does," he replied calmly. "Your yelling is disrupting the entire cabin, and we are already running late for takeoff." "Are you kidding me right now?" the older sister demanded. "We're the victims here, and you're worried about your precious schedule." The businessman just shook his head and leaned back in his seat, clearly deciding this wasn't worth engaging with further. Monica spoke quietly into a radio, presumably calling for backup. Sarah could only catch fragments of the situation in first class. Passengers refusing to move. "Need assistance?" The younger sister's voice rose to a near shriek. "I have a medical condition. I can't sit in economy. The seats are too small and I'll have a panic attack." "If you have a medical condition that requires specific seating," Monica said, "you would need to have made those arrangements when you booked your ticket, along with proper documentation." "This is insane," the older sister yelled. "We're being harassed by this woman," she pointed at Sarah, "and now you're questioning our medical needs. This is definitely going online. I'm posting about this on every social media platform I have." Sarah had remained quiet during most of this exchange. But now she spoke up. "I'm not harassing anyone. I'm simply trying to get to my assigned seat." "Yes, you are," the younger sister shot back. "You're trying to force us out of our seats." "Your seats are in row 12, Sarah said calmly. "In economy. Where your tickets say they are." The older sister's face was now completely red. "Don't you dare talk to us like that. Who do you think you are?" "I'm a doctor," Sarah replied simply. "And I'm trying to get to Los Angeles for a medical conference." I paid for this seat, and I have every right to sit in it. Oh, so you think you're better than us because you're a doctor, the younger sister sneered. Well, let me tell you something. Miss High and Mighty, that's enough, a new voice interrupted. Everyone turned to see a man in a pilot's uniform approaching from the cockpit. He was tall, salt and pepper hair, with the kind of commanding presence that immediately quieted the cabin. I'm Captain Rodriguez, he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd been flying for decades. I understand we have a seating dispute. The sister's demeanor changed instantly. The older one put on what Sarah could only describe as a sweet voice. Oh, Captain, thank goodness. We've been trying to explain to your staff that we are in the right seats, but this woman is trying to force us to move. Captain. 45 minutes into the flight, Sarah had finally managed to focus on her presentation. The cabin had settled into the familiar rhythm of a red-eye flight, overhead lights dimmed, passengers either sleeping or quietly working on laptops. She was reviewing her slides on breakthrough cancer treatments when she heard it, a voice from the back of the plane, deliberately loud enough to carry. I'm telling you, Mom, it was the most discriminatory thing I've ever experienced. This Asian doctor acted like she was better than us, and the crew totally took her side. Sarah's blood ran cold. She could hear the younger sister's voice clearly from row 12, and it was obvious she was speaking loudly on purpose. No, Mom, I'm serious. She was so rude and entitled. Just because she's a doctor, she thought she could push us around. And the flight attendants? They were completely unprofessional. The businessman in 1B looked back toward economy, then at Sarah with an expression of disbelief. Other passengers were starting to stir, annoyed by the loud phone conversation. I know. Right? And get this, she had the nerve to wave her boarding pass around like it made her special. Like, we've been loyal customers for years and they treated us like garbage. Sarah tried to ignore it, but the sister's voice was getting louder. We are definitely going to post about this. Everyone needs to know how this airline treats passengers. Especially how they let certain people get away with bullying others. The emphasis on certain people made Sarah's skin crawl. She knew exactly what was being implied. Monica appeared at Sarah's row, her face tight with concern. Dr. Chen, I'm so sorry. She's not actually on a phone call. We require phones to be in airplane mode. What do you mean? Sarah asked, though she was starting to understand. She's talking loudly on purpose. Probably hoping to get a reaction from you or other passengers. As if on cue, the older sister's voice joined in from row 12. Jessica, tell Mom about how the pilot threatened us. He was so aggressive, totally unprofessional. All because we were trying to sit together due to my anxiety. A woman in row 3 turned around and shushed them. Some people are trying to sleep. Excuse me, the older sister's voice shot back. We are having a private conversation about the discrimination we just experienced. We have every right to talk about it. Then, talk quietly, the woman replied. You're disturbing the entire cabin. We are not disturbing anyone, the younger sister said. We are discussing our traumatic experience. Maybe if you had any empathy, you'd understand. Monica spoke into a radio again, we have a situation. In row 12. Passengers are deliberately causing a disturbance. Sarah felt sick. She dealt with difficult people before, but this was different. This was calculated. They were trying to create a narrative where she was the villain. The older sister's voice rose again. I'm just saying, Mom, it's interesting how some people get treated differently than others. The whole crew bent over backward for her, but when we needed help, they threatened to kick us off the plane. Sarah finally turned around. The sisters were both looking directly at her, smug expressions on their faces. They wanted her to react. They were trying to bait her into saying something that would support their victim narrative. She turned back around without saying a word. See, the younger sister said triumphantly. She won't even look at us now. Too good to acknowledge the people she got kicked out of first class. An elderly man in row 4 spoke up. Young ladies, I watched that entire interaction. Those seats weren't yours. Oh, now we have witnesses changing their stories, the older sister said mockingly. How convenient. Nobody's changing any story, the man replied firmly. You were in the wrong seats, you refused to move, and you made a scene. Now you're making another scene. We're not making a scene, the younger sister protested. We're trying to process what happened to us. You're trying to cause trouble, the elderly man said. And it's not working. Sarah heard the older sister whisper something to her sister, and then the younger one pulled out her phone. Apparently she'd switched it out of airplane mode. I'm going to record this, she announced. Everyone needs to see how we are being treated. You need to put your phone in airplane mode, Monica said, appearing at row 12. I'm documenting harassment, the sister replied. This is for our safety. Your phone needs to be in airplane mode during flight. Federal regulations. Are you kidding me? The older sister exploded. Now you're trying to stop us from protecting ourselves. This is unbelievable. Two more flight attendants appeared, a young man named David and an older woman named Susan. The situation was escalating beyond what Monica could handle alone. Ladies, Susan said in a voice that brooked no argument, we need you to lower your voices and put your devices in airplane mode. We're not doing anything wrong, the younger sister said, but her voice was less confident now that she was facing 3 flight attendants. You're disturbing other passengers, David explained. We've had multiple complaints. From who? The older sister demanded. From her. She pointed at Sarah. Of course she's complaining. She's been targeting us since we got on this plane. The businessman in 1B stood up. I'd like to file a complaint too. They've been deliberately loud and disruptive for the past 20 minutes. Me too, said the woman in row 3. And me, added the elderly man in row 4. The sisters looked around the cabin and realized that most of the passengers were staring at them with expressions ranging from annoyance to outright hostility. This is a conspiracy, the younger sister said weakly. You're all ganging up on us. Nobody's ganging up on anyone, Susan replied. But you're going to need to keep your voices down and put your devices in airplane mode, or we are going to have to discuss other options. Other options? The older sister's voice cracked. Like what? Like having authorities meet us when we land, Susan said calmly. The threat seemed to hit home. The sisters looked at each other, and Sarah could see them calculating their next move. Fine, the older sister said. We'll be quiet. But this is going straight to corporate. And to social media. And to our lawyers. That's your right, Susan said. But for now, we need quiet voices and airplane mode. For about 15 minutes, the cabin was peaceful. Sarah began to think the crisis had passed. She was wrong. She was reviewing her research data when she heard a new sound from row 12, crying. Not genuine tears, but the kind of theatrical sobbing designed to attract attention. I can't believe this is happening, the younger sister wailed. We're being discriminated against because we're blonde. I know, honey, the older sister said. Her voice dripping with fake sympathy. It's not our fault that some people have prejudices. The crying got louder. Other passengers were starting to look around, some with sympathy, others with skepticism. My anxiety is so bad right now, the younger sister continued. I feel like I'm going to have a panic attack. Do you need your medication? The older sister asked, loudly enough for everyone to hear. I don't know if it's going to help. I'm so traumatized by what happened. Sarah closed her eyes and tried to focus on her breathing. She was a doctor. She knew the difference between genuine distress and performance art. This was definitely the latter. But some passengers were starting to buy it. A middle-aged woman in row 8 turned around with a concerned expression. Are you okay, honey? We're just trying to process what happened to us, the older sister explained. We were humiliated in front of the entire cabin because we accidentally sat in the wrong seats. That's not what happened, the businessman in 1B said firmly. Everyone has their own perspective, the older sister replied. But my sister has anxiety, and the way we were treated triggered a severe episode. The woman in row 8 shot a disapproving look toward the front of the plane, directly at Sarah. Sarah felt her heart racing. They were successfully rewriting the narrative. People who hadn't witnessed the original confrontation were starting to believe their version of events. "I think I need to go to the bathroom," the younger sister said, her voice shaky. "But I'm scared to walk past to her." She meant Sarah. "I'll go with you," the older sister said protectively. "We'll stick together." They made their way up the aisle, and Sarah could feel their presence as they passed her row. The younger sister was still making soft crying sounds, and the older sister was making soothing noises. "It's okay," the older sister whispered, just loud enough for Sarah to hear. "We are going to make sure everyone knows what really happened here." As they passed, Sarah caught a glimpse of the younger sister's face. There wasn't a tear in sight, but her eyes were filled with malicious satisfaction. They were gone for nearly 10 minutes. When they came back, the younger sister was walking with an exaggerated, unsteady gait, and the older sister was practically supporting her. "Are you sure you're okay?" the older sister asked loudly. "I'm just so shaken up," the younger sister replied. "I keep thinking about how angry everyone was with us. It was so scary." More passengers were starting to turn around, and Sarah could see the doubt in their expressions. The sisters were painting themselves as victims of a mob mentality, and it was working. "Maybe we should ask the flight attendants for some water," the older sister suggested. "You look pale." David appeared almost immediately. "Is everything all right back here?" "My sister is having a panic attack," the older sister explained. "Sure." The someone was Captain Rodriguez, and he was furious. Unknown to the passengers, the cockpit had been monitoring the cabin audio throughout the flight. Every word the sisters had spoken, their fake phone calls, their theatrical performances, their calculated attempts to rewrite history, had been recorded and heard by the flight crew. Captain Rodriguez had been flying for 23 years. He'd seen every kind of passenger behavior imaginable, from genuine medical emergencies to elaborate scams. But this level of manipulation was something new, and it was happening on his aircraft. He made a decision that would change everything. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking." His voice came over the intercom system, calm but with an edge that made everyone pay attention. "I need to address a situation that's been developing in our cabin tonight." The entire plane fell silent. The sisters in row 12 looked at each other with sudden panic in their eyes. "About an hour ago, we had a seating dispute involving passengers who were sitting in seats they had not purchased. The situation was resolved when the passengers moved to their correct, assigned seats. However, there has been ongoing disruptive behavior that I need to address." Sarah felt her stomach drop. She had no idea what the captain was about to say. But she could feel the eyes of the entire cabin on her. "For the past 45 minutes, our cabin crew has been monitoring a deliberate campaign of harassment and misinformation being conducted by the same passengers who were originally in the wrong seats. This behavior includes fake phone calls. We can confirm that no calls were actually connected during the times in question, theatrical performances designed to manipulate other passengers, and the spread of false information about what occurred during the initial seating dispute." The cabin was so quiet you could hear the engines humming. "I want to be very clear about what actually happened." Dr. Sarah Chen, seated in 2A, presented her valid boarding pass for her assigned seat. 2 other passengers were occupying that seat without authorization. When asked to move to their correct seats, those passengers became disruptive and refused to comply with crew instructions. They were eventually escorted to their assigned seats in economy class, where they belong. The sisters were no longer making any sound at all. Since that time, these same passengers have been deliberately creating disturbances, making false accusations, and attempting to intimidate the passenger who was simply trying to occupy her rightfully purchased seat. This behavior is unacceptable and will not be tolerated on my aircraft. Sarah could hear whispers starting throughout the cabin, but they sounded different now, angry, directed toward the back of the plane. "I am informing all passengers that authorities will be meeting this aircraft upon landing to address this situation. The passengers in question will be removed from the aircraft and will face potential federal charges for their behavior during this flight." The captain's voice grew harder. I also want to address the subtle but unmistakable racial undertones that have been part of this harassment campaign. This airline has zero tolerance for discrimination of any kind. Dr. Chen was not treated differently because of her race, she was treated like any passenger who has a valid ticket for their seat. The insinuation that her race played a role in our crew's actions is both offensive and completely false. Sarah felt tears in her eyes, but for the first time since the ordeal began, they were tears of relief. Finally, I want to remind all passengers that federal law prohibits interference with flight crew members and the deliberate disruption of aircraft operations. These laws exist for everyone's safety and will be enforced. The captain paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was gentler. Dr. Chen, on behalf of the entire crew, I apologize for the harassment you've endured on this flight. You handled an impossible situation with remarkable grace and professionalism. The moment the captain finished speaking, the cabin erupted. But this time, it wasn't the polite applause from first class. This was a plane full of passengers who had been manipulated and lied to, and they were angry. Are you kidding me? The businessman in 1B said loudly, turning to face the back of the plane. You made all of that up. This is insane, said the woman in row 3. I actually felt sorry for you. The elderly man in row 4 was shaking his head. I've seen some shameful behavior in my 82 years, but this takes the cake. Even the woman in row 8 who had initially shown sympathy was now staring at the sisters with disgust. You made me think that poor doctor was a bully. How could you do that? The sisters seemed to shrink into their seats. The younger one tried. One last desperate play, that's not true. The captain is lying to protect the airline. Are you seriously going to claim that the captain is lying? Asked a man in row 15. After we all heard you making those fake phone calls. They weren't fake, the older sister protested, but her voice was weak. I work for AT&T, said a woman in row 13. I know what actual phone calls sound like on airplanes. You were talking to nobody. The sisters were now completely cornered. Every passenger who had initially bought into their victim narrative was now turning against them with the fury of people who had been deliberately deceived. I recorded part of your fake phone call, announced a teenager in row 11, holding up his phone. Want me to play it back? You can't record us without permission, the younger sister squeaked. Actually, I can, the teenager replied. We're in a public space, and you were talking loud enough for everyone to hear. Besides, you were the one who wanted to record everything earlier. Monica appeared at Sarah's row again. Dr. Chen, I cannot apologize enough for what you've been put through tonight. The captain has asked me to personally ensure that you're comfortable for the remainder of the flight. Thank you, Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. I had no idea the captain was listening to everything. We have protocols for situations like this, Monica explained. When passengers file complaints about disruptive behavior, we monitor the situation carefully. What those women did was one of the most calculated harassment campaigns I've ever witnessed. From row 12, Sarah could hear the sisters whispering frantically to each other. Their voices were no longer loud and performative, they were desperate and scared. We need to get our story straight, the older sister hissed. What story? The younger sister whispered back. Everyone heard what the captain said. They know we were lying. We'll say we were traumatized and not thinking clearly, the older sister said. We'll say we were confused and upset. Will that work? The younger sister asked. It has to work, the older sister replied. Because if it doesn't, we are going to jail. But their whispered conversation was loud enough for nearby passengers to hear, and the reaction was immediate. Are you serious right now? Called out a woman in row 14. You're still trying to figure out how to lie your way out of this. We heard you planning your next fake story, added a man in row 16. Give it up already. The sisters fell silent, finally realizing that everything they said was being heard and judged by a cabin full of passengers who now knew exactly what they were capable of. David, the male flight attendant, approached Sarah's row with a bottle of wine. Compliments of the captain, he said with a smile. He thought you might need this. Sarah accepted the wine gratefully. Please thank him for me. I had no idea anyone was paying attention to what was happening. We are always paying attention, David replied. Especially when passengers are being targeted the way you were. The plane began its descent toward Los Angeles and Sarah looked out the window at the city lights below. Just a few hours ago, she had been worried about her presentation. Now she was wondering if she'd be called as a witness in a federal case. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, Dr. Chen. This is Captain Rodriguez. I wanted you to know that I've been in touch with our corporate office. The airline would like to offer you a full refund for your ticket, an upgrade to first class on all future flights for a year, and a formal apology for what you experienced tonight. Sarah stared at the message in disbelief. She texted back. That's very generous, but not necessary. I just appreciate you standing up for the truth. His response came quickly, it's absolutely necessary. What happened to you is unacceptable. Also, the authorities will want to speak with you when we land, but only as a witness. You're not in any trouble. As the plane touched down at LAX, Sarah could see police cars and airport security vehicles waiting on the tarmac. The sisters had gone completely silent, and the cabin was filled with the kind of tense anticipation that comes when everyone knows they are about to witness the consequences of someone's actions. The captain's voice came over the intercom one final time, ladies and gentlemen, we've arrived at Los Angeles International Airport. Please remain in your seats until we are fully parked and the seatbelt sign is turned off. Law enforcement will be boarding the aircraft to address the situation we discussed earlier. Sarah watched through her window as uniformed officers approached the plane. She thought about the presentation she'd worked so hard to prepare, about the breakthrough cancer treatments that could help thousands of people, about how this night had turned into something completely surreal. But as the officers boarded the aircraft and made their way toward row 12, Sarah realized something. The officer who smiled at Sarah was Detective Maria Vasquez, and she recognized her immediately, not from the flight, but from the medical journals. Dr. Chen. Detective Vasquez approached her row as her colleagues dealt with the sisters. I hate to bother you after what you've been through, but are you Dr. Sarah Chen from Cedars-Sinai? The one working on the breakthrough pancreatic cancer treatments? Sarah blinked in surprise. Yes, that's me. How did you? My daughter is Dr. Elena Vasquez. She's an oncology resident, and she's been following your research for months. She's actually attending the pharmaceutical conference tomorrow specifically to hear your presentation. The irony wasn't lost on Sarah. After hours of harassment and false accusations, she was being recognized for her actual accomplishments by the mother of a colleague. That's wonderful, Sarah said, though she was still processing everything that had happened. Your daughter is in oncology. Third-year resident at UCLA, Detective Vasquez said proudly. She talks about your work all the time. Something about innovative protein targeting. Protein degradation therapy, Sarah corrected gently. We are working on ways to make cancer cells destroy themselves by targeting specific proteins. Behind them, the sisters were being escorted off the plane in handcuffs. The younger sister was crying, real tears this time, and the older sister was demanding to speak to a lawyer. Other passengers were pulling out their phones, recording the arrest that would undoubtedly go viral within hours. Dr. Chen, Detective Vasquez continued, I know this has been a terrible experience, but I wanted you to know that what those women did, the harassment, the false accusations, the racial targeting, we take very seriously. They'll be facing federal charges. What kind of charges? Sarah asked. Interference with flight crew, making false statements to federal agents, harassment, and possibly hate crime enhancements given the racial component of their behavior, Detective Vasquez explained. The recordings from the cockpit provide clear evidence of their intent to intimidate and harass you. As they spoke, Sarah noticed a commotion near the gate. News crews were setting up, and airport security was trying to manage a growing crowd. Word had already gotten out about the incident. Dr. Chen. A reporter spotted her as she exited the plane. Can you comment on what happened during the flight? Monica, the flight attendant, immediately stepped between Sarah and the reporter. Dr. Chen has been through enough tonight. Please respect her privacy. But more reporters were arriving, and Sarah realized she was about to become the center of a media storm she never wanted. "This way," Detective Vasquez said, guiding Sarah through a side corridor away from the cameras. "We can get you out of here without dealing with all that." As they walked, Detective Vasquez's phone rang. "Yes, Elena, I know you're watching the news." "No, I can't believe it either." "Actually, she's right here." She handed the phone to Sarah. "My daughter would love to speak with you if you have a moment." Sarah took the phone, grateful for any distraction from the chaos around her. "Dr. Chen. This is Elena Vasquez. I cannot believe what I just saw on the news. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Sarah said, though she wasn't entirely sure that was true. "Just a very long night." "What those women did was absolutely disgusting," Elena said, her voice filled with indignation. "But Dr. Chen, I have to tell you, your research has been inspiring my entire approach to oncology. The protein degradation work you're presenting tomorrow could revolutionize how we treat pancreatic cancer." "Thank you," Sarah said, feeling some of her confidence returning. "That means everything, especially after tonight. Dr. Chen, I know this is probably terrible timing, but would you be interested in having dinner before your presentation tomorrow? I'd love to discuss your research, and honestly, after what you've been through, you probably shouldn't be alone." Sarah found herself smiling for the first time in hours. "I'd like that very much." As she handed the phone back to Detective Vasquez, Sarah noticed that her own phone was buzzing with notifications. Dozens of texts, missed calls, and social media alerts. One text from her research partner caught her attention. "Sarah, the video from the plane is everywhere. Everyone's talking about how you handled that situation with such grace. The conference organizers want to move your presentation to the main auditorium. They are expecting a much larger crowd now." Another text from her department head, "Saw the news. Proud of how you represented yourself and the medical community. Take tomorrow off if you need it." And then a text that made her heart skip, "Dr. Chen, this is Dr. James Morrison from Morrison Pharmaceuticals. I saw what happened on your flight tonight and was impressed by your composure under pressure. Would like to discuss potential funding for your research. Would you be available for lunch tomorrow after your presentation?" Sarah stared at the phone. Dr. Morrison was one of the most influential figures in pharmaceutical research. His company had funded some of the most groundbreaking medical advances of the past decade. "Good news?" Detective Vasquez asked, noticing Sarah's expression. "I think so," Sarah said slowly. "It's strange, this terrible experience might actually lead to opportunities one never could have imagined. Sometimes that's how life works." Detective Vasquez said. "My Elena always says that challenges reveal character. And from what I witnessed tonight, you've got plenty of character." They had reached the main terminal, where Detective Vasquez's colleagues were processing the sisters. Through the window, Sarah could see them sitting in an airport security office, both looking much smaller and less intimidating than they had on the plane. "What happens to them now?" Sarah asked. "They'll be formally charged tomorrow morning," Detective Vasquez explained. "Given the federal nature of the charges and the evidence we have, they are looking at serious consequences. The fake phone calls alone constitute fraud, and the harassment campaign was captured on recording." "Will I have to testify?" "Probably not. The cockpit recordings are pretty damning, and we have dozens of witnesses. Their lawyers will likely advise them to take a plea deal." As they talked, Sarah noticed a familiar figure approaching, Captain Rodriguez, now out of uniform and carrying a small bouquet of flowers. "Dr. Chen," he said warmly, "I wanted to apologize again for what you experienced on my aircraft. I also wanted you to know that the airline's corporate office has been in touch. They'd like to offer you complimentary flights anywhere in the world for the next 5 years." "That's incredibly generous," Sarah said, accepting the flowers. "But really, you already did more than enough by standing up for the truth." "Actually," Captain Rodriguez said with a smile, "there's something else. My wife happens to be Dr. Patricia Rodriguez. She's the conference director for tomorrow's pharmaceutical summit. She saw the news coverage and asked me to tell you that your presentation has been moved to the keynote slot. The entire industry is talking about your grace under pressure. Sarah felt dizzy. In the span of one terrible flight, she'd gone from worrying about giving a small presentation to being offered the keynote address at one of the most important conferences in her field. I don't know what to say, she managed. Say you'll knock them dead tomorrow, Captain Rodriguez replied. After what you've been through tonight, a room full of pharmaceutical executives should be easy. As Sarah made her way to the hotel shuttle, her phone rang. It was her mentor, Dr. Elizabeth Park, who had guided her through medical school and her early research career. Sarah, I just saw the news. Are you all right? I think so, Sarah said. It's been surreal. I want you to know that the entire medical community is rallying behind you. What those women did was despicable, but your response was perfect. You showed exactly the kind of professionalism and dignity that makes me proud to be in this field. Thank you, Dr. Park. That means everything coming from you. Sarah, I also have some news. The National Cancer Institute saw the coverage of tonight's events. They were already considering your research for a major grant, but after seeing how you handled yourself under pressure, they want to fast-track the approval process. We are talking about $50 million in funding. Sarah had to sit down. $50 million would fund her research for the next decade and allow her to expand her team exponentially. Are you serious? Dead serious. They said, and I quote, anyone who can maintain that level of composure while being harassed deserves every resource we can provide to advance their research. As the shuttle pulled away from the airport, Sarah looked back at the terminal where, just hours ago, she'd been the target of a calculated harassment campaign. Now she was heading to what could be the most important presentation of her career, with funding opportunities beyond her wildest dreams. Her phone buzzed with one more text, this one from Elena Vasquez. Dr. Chen, I hope you don't mind, but I told some of my fellow residents about meeting you through my mom. We are all planning to attend your keynote tomorrow. You've become a hero to a lot of us, not just for your research, but for how you handled yourself tonight. See you tomorrow. Sarah smiled and closed her eyes, finally allowing herself to process everything that had happened. In trying to destroy her, the sisters had accidentally launched her into a spotlight that would advance her career and research in ways she never could have imagined. But the story wasn't over. Why?